What's the smallest amount of power you've seen go to someone's head? Story 1. Slightly off topic, but a definite corruption of power that backfired hardcore. So my dad opened up a chain of scrapyards that eventually ended up being wildly successful. My dad is also a person who has the life motto, never give your kids things because they will turn out to be entitled brats. Needless to say, working at his most successful scrapyard did not lead to a high-paying position or fast rising through the ranks. It was so bad that this manager named Ryan, yes, this is his real name because no craps were given, actually had to suggest to my dad that it was time to put me in management after 4 years of busting my butt harder than any other employee, and even being the one to train him in a year prior. Pops didn't trust me running companies at this point in time, which in hindsight makes sense. So I finally get this management position where I had a small crew on the second shift. It was 3 weeks before Christmas, and I told my dad I was looking to go balls to the wall on Christmas spending so I could finally feel like I'd given back to everyone that was important to me. I was a bit selfish prior to that point, I'll admit, so I picked out all the gifts I wanted to give my girlfriend at the time and the rest of the family. Around $2,400 worth. I was about 21, so this was a big amount of money for me at the time, and I was determined. Instead of being an entitled schmuck like most rich kids, I simply asked if I could work tons of extra hours so I could earn enough money to buy these gifts. He says, well, you better haul and talk to the other branches and find out if you can get some overtime in, because you're going to need that time and a half for a Christmas list like that. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, I worked 80 hours a week and totaled 160 hours, with 80 of it being overtime at multiple different shops that I drove all over to get to. I told everyone, including this Ryan dude, how ecstatic I was to have made enough to get everyone everything they wanted and enough left over to treat myself. Everyone congratulated me on my work ethic, and it finally came time for me to go and collect my money. So now it's payday and 2 days before Christmas. I head to the main office to turn in my hours sheet, and the secretary tells me she needs to make sure it's okay with Ryan before she pays me. At this point, I'm a little confused as to why she needs to do this, as it has never been common practice before that point. So she brings my punch card to him, and he comes back over to the office and says, I'm not paying you this. Mind you, my dad just gave him a $68,000 truck that he just bought but didn't like anymore, and it had no miles on it. I, of course, asked what the hell he was talking about. He responds by telling me he isn't going to pay me that because it's more than he made, so there's no way he's going to authorize me to cash it out. I am absolutely dumbfounded at this point, but figured maybe there was some confusion or something. So to clear the air, I explained to him that my dad and everyone else in multiple shops okayed me working these hours. They can all verify that I did, in fact, work every minute that I said I did. Don't know how much you guys know about recycling metals and the ins and outs of the business, but I sweat blood for that check. I could barely function from exhaustion. Then explains to me that even if my dad okayed it, the owner who hired him, he was not cool with it. The most he would pay me was the hourly wage with no overtime because otherwise, I would make too much. Since y'all don't know my dad, I feel I must inform you he is a hothead. At this point, my blood is boiling. We all hate the guy that pulls rank or acts entitled but had no choice because this guy was a straight entitled, power-hungry, money-grubbing, unappreciative prick. So I inform him without raising my voice or acting irrationally that when the guy who signs his check tells him to pay someone, he probably shouldn't argue. He tells me I don't give a crap. This isn't going to fly. I let him know I'm going to call my dad on the spot if he doesn't pay me and he can work it out with him, but not until I tell my dad every word of the conversation. He tells me he doesn't give a crap, my dad doesn't have a say. I chuckle and call and inform my dad everything. My dad ended up yelling so loud, "Put Ryan on the phone!" After calling him quite a few names that were less than professional, and you would have sworn he was on speakerphone, but he wasn't. I handed the phone to Ryan, and to this day, I'm not quite sure what my dad said, but I've never seen a guy so red. He walks back into the office and pulls out my $3,500 cash, and never really spoke to me again after that. Entitled prick. And to think the whole time he knew that most of this money was for other people in the Christmas spirit, and I worked harder than anyone else to earn it. Oh, I'm sorry, you working 40-hour work weeks doesn't make as much as me doubling your work hours, you poor thing. Should I go fetch your brand new Chevy Silverado 2500 HD loaded plow truck for you that you didn't spend a dime on? That's the worst I've ever seen someone let power get to their head. Ever. Hey there. If you haven't heard already, a few friends and I recently launched Rufus Rugs, your go-to destination for premium custom hand-tufted rugs. Looking to add a touch of your favorite anime like Naruto to your space? We've got you covered. Or perhaps you're a die-hard Pokemon guy and want bus toys showcased for everyone to admire. No matter your style, we can bring your vision to life. Click the first link in the description to explore more. Story 2. Used to work with a group of other interns in an office. For some reason I still don't understand, they decided to promote one of us over the others. Her job was basically just to schedule who was doing what and when. That's it. Only took 2 weeks before we found out she was keeping detailed notes on all of our mistakes and taking them to upper management. They promptly told her to calm down and decided to do away with her position. She made a lot of enemies that day. She had ambitions of working at the company and was trying to make us all look bad. I think that one may have backfired on her. Honestly, that's good upper management. You rarely expect those guys to be on your side when you're actually in the right. Story 3. This is so stupid and it still pisses me off to this day. So my company ran a contest where the winner got $100. I won. No strings attached. Use the $100 to get whatever you want. The thing I wanted most was new office supplies, a new pair of scissors, a new tape dispenser, stuff like that. I made a list of items and approached my coworker. You see, she was in charge of our company purchase orders, and if I went through her, I could get $120 worth of office supplies for $100. $100 even, down to the penny, including shipping. No, I don't like the colors, she said simply. I thought she was joking. Her office supplies were covered in minion stickers. I think we can comfortably rule out aesthetic appeal as a reasonable denial. Also, it's not her money. It's not for her desk. The rules of the contest said I could buy anything, even alcohol or a Visa gift card. There were no stipulations as to what color stapler I was allowed to get. I assumed she told a joke and it just fell flat. A week goes by. I ask her what the status of my order was. No, I'm not going to run that through. I think it's tacky, and I think it's stupid that you won. I bet if I ordered minion stuff, she would have approved it in a heartbeat. I wish I could have a nice revenge story, but I just ended up using my money for groceries instead. Story 4. My 6th grade self got chosen for the prestigious role of classroom clipboard holder. As soon as I was chosen, I went to the front of the room with a teacher, pen and clipboard ready to mark down whoever speaks. With my eyes gazing left to right searching for a chatterbox, I hear the smallest noise come from Emily in the back.
I think, screw Emily, and announce to the class, that's one, and write her name down.
Even though the poor girl probably just had a cough. As soon as this happens, Mr. Wise takes the clipboard away and tells me to be quiet. The power was gone. I was quiet for the rest of the class. Having the classroom clipboard for the first time is a canon event that teaches you a pretty fun lesson. Story 5. Years ago, while working at a pizza place, our manager had to leave in a family emergency and left a girl in charge until one of the other shift runners could get there, and he lived about 45 minutes away. In that 45 minutes, this girl who was left in charge actually called one of her friends and hired her, saying she was the manager now. Wrote me up for putting too much cheese on a pizza, and actually told one of the drivers he was fired because she didn't like his attitude. When the shift runner got there to take over, this girl also told him not to worry about it and that she had things under control. End result, her friend was not hired. My write-up for using too much cheese was torn up. The fired driver, who never left the parking lot, kept his job, and she quit a few days later because we were unprofessional and the manager played favorites.
She did all that in 45 minutes? How terrible can someone be?
Story 6. When I played Halo 2, I joined a fairly large clan that had some pretty cool people in it. We did a lot together, and every once in a while, they would elect a new forum moderator or office to run the ranks. One day they elect this kid who sounded like he was 11 to be the new officer. He seemed pretty down to earth, but the very next day, he gets home from school and starts kicking every single person from the clan who just even slightly brushed him the wrong way. It was so bad that the leader, who was on vacation in Hawaii, had to log in from a library computer in order to strip all the power from this kid.
The kid's reasoning was that he didn't get picked for a baseball game at school and was angry the rest of the day.
Story 7. In elementary school, I was on the safety patrol, which basically meant that I stood at the busy intersection alongside an adult crossing guard, and when he went into the street to stop traffic, I would let the little kids know it was safe to cross. I also told other kids not to run, etc. Well, one day, a girl a grade below me walked up from the hill from the elementary school to the intersection, instead of taking the stairs.
So I grabbed her by the arm and marched her back to the stairs and told her she had to take the stairs.
Proto-fascist right here. I got in trouble for it. There are lots of adults with the same level of power trip. You should be glad he learned early. There are also a lot of you who haven't left a like in the video and subscribed to the channel yet, so I hope you do it now. Story 8. I worked at Blockbuster. One of the employees, Melanie, got a key holder promotion over me. We didn't really like each other, but it wasn't a blood feud. One day the manager called me to sub in for someone who called out sick. It's my off day. I'm at college and don't have my uniform. I tell the manager this and she says, I need a body here to work the register. Get here ASAP. I show up in casual clothing and I've been working with another key holder for about 6 hours. Melanie comes in to rent something because it's her day off and flips out. She goes back to the office and proceeds to write me up for failing to comply with the dress code and so on. She then proceeds to try and make me sign it then and there, all while off the clock. She's still hourly. She does this for the next 2 hours until the store closes. No dice. I tell her to get screwed. The manager comes in the next morning to a whole mess. Melanie gets written up for working off the clock, tells her I acted on a direct order from her, and she needs to get off her high horse. Mostly, I'm impressed with his ability to keep cool and just focus on his duties, knowing no matter how bad she made things seem, none of it mattered, and she was just digging her own grave deeper. Story 9. Substitute raid leader in Rift. An MMORPG like World of Warcraft. Normal raid leader was going to be gone for 1 week and appointed our tank to lead the 20 of us through a dungeon we had been many times before. We start out by wiping twice due to a new player, a younger girl, handling the part our leader normally did. No big deal, normal learning curve, right? The tank, I'll call him Napoleon Jr., decides the best course of action is to use every 4-letter word he knows and berates her in voice chat, humiliating her in front of the whole raid. She gets emotional and he just ramps it up higher. Whole raid starts telling him to knock it off and he starts kicking people from the raid. After about 10 to 15 minutes of this, most of the rest of the raid team starts dropping out of the group and begins reforming without him. At this point, he goes absolutely ballistic, screaming so loud and furiously that I can't help but think he was bipolar or something. We fill his spot with a friend of the guild, clan, and Napoleon stays in voice chat cursing us and trying to interfere with our raid. We didn't have mod rights to kick him. His last words before we switched voice chat servers were, "I'm in charge this week." Story 10. I work at a retail establishment. One guy started at the bottom of the totem pole with the rest of us. He's a gigantic nerd who totally owns it, and we respect him for that, and I actually really like him for the most part. But his nerdiness, organizational skills, and attention to detail got him promoted to assistant manager, alongside half a dozen other people. Overnight, he turned into Bill Lumberg from Office Space. Suddenly, closing time chores turned into, "Yeah, I'm going to have you two take out the trash and you clean the break room. When you're done, come see me if anyone wants to clock out 10 minutes early." He's still the butt of a lot of our jokes, mostly to his face, but you can almost see him lick his lips and enjoy the flavor every time he gets to tell someone what to do. Dude, you're the least senior manager of a team of 8 people overseeing 8 other people. The height of your power is to ask a 20-year-old to clean the break room and hope that they don't just quit on the spot. Story 11. Alright, so I was a PA, production assistant, the lowest of the low in a film set, for a Kelsey Grammer submarine comedy called Down Periscope. One guy was given the meaningless title of Key PA and decided he was going to help wrangle background extras for this big exterior shot we were working on. Now everyone, including the extras, knew that the camera was probably framed in a medium close-up on the principal actors, who were doing a scene way down at the end of a dock. Nonetheless, Key PA guy took it upon himself to start blocking out whole entire scenes of these background extras. I'm talking crowds of people. "You guys over there, you're the families of the sailors who haven't seen your husbands in 6 months and you run from the bus to the fence. But you guys are cadets who get in the way and you guys are arguing about which car has the right of way. Then all you kids start clapping because you see a big doggy pulling his owner so fast he trips over the leash. Like the second unit on a Michael Bay movie. He had these people doing his made-up little scene over and over and over. He'd yell at them, tell them they did it wrong and reset them, back to 1, to start over. Madness. I walked by the guy, noticed this was going on and said, "You know the camera is pointed the other direction, right?" He just laughed and said, "I know." Story 12. As a part of her job, the girl who does payroll also tracks vacation days. The company I worked for was small and family-owned. They really didn't care how many days you took off as long as your stuff got done. Or you could work extra hours or take stuff home, no big deal. It's the Spanish Inquisition with this girl, though. We even created a system of letting each other know, us slower people anyway, when we'd be off using just colors and markings in the calendar because if it was written anywhere, she'd find it and be a psycho about tracking it. She even took 2 hours of my vacation time because I left early to go to the airport. I was salaried. Yet somehow she went to Mexico for 10 days and never used any vacation time. Story 13. I have a big group of friends who go to the local park on a regular basis and play outdoor games and board games. I brought a set of lawn darts as well as numerous other games. We were deliberately in a part of the park where no other people were around for at least 100 meters. The patrol drove up in a little cart, this fussy man got out, hooked his thumbs in his belt loops and shambled over to me like a Western cartoon character. The only thing he was missing was hay in his teeth and a hat to tip back. He tried to confiscate my lawn darts as they posed a danger to the public. I pointed out there was no public around outside of our group. Then he went with the line that I, the little lady, was using them incorrectly and posing a danger to myself. I was 38 at the time and I am 5'10". I towered over his little diminutive self and lady is not the first word I would use to describe myself. I asked him on whose authority he was confiscating my games and to show me the bylaw that allowed this. I even pulled out my phone to look up the park rules. He started to get flustered and by this point, my friends were openly laughing at his routine. They backed off and drove away. Later that day, when one of us made a complaint at the office, we learned he was actually the park maintenance man, garbage collector, and had zero authority. He wasn't even supposed to be driving the particular vehicle. Story 14. The upperclassmen at my university would proctor exams the freshmen would take. I wasn't there for this, but my friend tells the story of how he and Lois were the 2 proctors while the professor was in his office down the hall. Apparently, in an effort to prevent cheating, Lois brought a clipboard and noted when and where each student went to the bathroom. Where, meaning that he would force students to use different bathrooms, the justification being that I suppose they could leave secret notes or something. So once the bathrooms on the 1st, 2nd, and 8th floors each had one person go there, he made a kid use a bathroom in the building next to ours. The kid complains to the other proctor, who grabs the professor, who fires Lois from the job. "Lois, I know you use Reddit and I know you might see this, and I'm sure you'll figure out who I am. You're a loser." "I don't know you, Lois, but, screw you too." Story 15. Today at the gas station, I was looking at the minis behind the counter trying to decide what I wanted. The lady at the counter said she needed my ID. I told her I wasn't ready yet. She said she needed my ID in her hands before she could tell me the prices of anything. I said I'd never asked the price. I'm just looking. I can look without handing you my ID. She said she needs my ID for me to look at the bottles of booze behind the counter. Her life must be great. I set it on the counter so she could look at it, and she took my ID and put it behind the counter. At that point, I told her to give it back now, and I left. So weird. Story 16. This is probably the best to share, but my favorite power trip was from one of my students. I had placed my kids in groups for a big project and gave them the option to elect their leader for each group. I intentionally placed all the quiet kids together, thinking nobody would overpower their ideas. I was so wrong. Vincent was elected leader because none of the other quiet kids wanted the responsibility, and he immediately became a despot, controlling whether they were allowed to ask me questions, giving assignments, and dictating the exact outcome, loudly berating his teammates if a drawn picture was even millimeters off-center. I want you to understand that before this, Vincent would hardly raise his voice when I made him answer a question for the class. After a day of guiding him toward better leadership strategies, I came in line with the U.S. Marines and deposed him. But better than the U.S. because I facilitated the next election. The students decided on joint power between two entities, so no single person would let the power go to their head. It would have been a great teachable moment for checks and balances, but we were studying anthropology, so I let it go and always looked sideways at Vincent after that. Story 17. My teacher appointed a kid to write down the names of kids who were talking while the teacher went to make copies. A couple names got written down, then this one kid, who looking back was probably on the spectrum, couldn't handle it and made a little squeak. The girl up front wrote his name down in huge letters and erased the rest of the names she wrote. The kid stood up on his desk and proclaimed, "You can write my name down, but you'll never silence me. You'll never take my freedom." When he sat down, the class started cheering and clapping and laughing hysterically, and the teacher walked in during the ruckus, looked over at the girl and the one giant name on the board, shook his head and just said, "This was obviously a terrible idea." Ouch. That girl was probably just Emily from Story 4 trying to get revenge. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. What's the most insane coincidence you've experienced? Story 3 was awesome. See you in that video.